A police captain who ruled his little kingdom like a tyrant smashed a young woman's car simply because she had parked in the wrong spot. He believed his badge made him a god, that his authority was absolute. He had no idea he had just declared war on the most powerful man in the state, her father, the governor. What follows is not merely a story of justice, but of the spectacular and humiliating downfall that comes when tyrants confuse arrogance with power. It is a hard lesson in who truly holds control. Where do you see yourself today? Tell us in the comments. Subscribe for more stories like this, and let's get straight to it. The Gables was more than a neighborhood. It was a living museum, a carefully preserved fragment of old Massachusetts wealth, where money whispered behind ivy-covered brick and wrought-iron gates. Every house stood as a testament to architectural history, from majestic Georgian manors to sprawling Tudor estates, set back from the quiet, tree-lined streets. For Aria Blackwell, an architect passionate about historic preservation, driving through the Gables felt like walking through a gallery. Today, however, it was more than a visit. She was a guest. One of her firm's most important clients, the Whitmores, were celebrating their golden wedding anniversary, and her presence was a professional courtesy that felt like a privilege. She wore a simple yet elegant crimson dress, a modern touch of confidence in a classic setting. The color made her feel bold and grounded. Her car for the evening was a midnight blue Porsche Macan, a recent birthday gift from her father. It might have been a little flashy for the Gables, but it handled the winding roads with a grace that suited her perfectly. Finding parking near the Whitmore estate proved, as expected, impossible. Guest cars lined the narrow street. Aria circled once before spotting a clear stretch of curb a block away. It was perfect, unmarked, legal, and with enough room not to crowd the driveway of the immaculate white colonial house in front of it. She parallel parked with practiced ease, the car settling with a soft sigh. Before heading to the party, she stepped out, her heels clicking softly on the slate sidewalk. The house she had parked in front of was magnificent, a classic example of federal-style architecture. The late afternoon light caught the roofline just right, and an impulse seized her. She pulled out her phone. The architect in her could not resist capturing the perfect light. She framed the shot, focusing on the fan light above the door, admiring the craftsmanship. For a moment, she lost herself in her work, in the simple beauty of a well-designed building. That was why she did not notice the patrol car until it had already slowed beside her Porsche. It moved with a predatory stillness, like a shark gliding through calm water. Captain Vance Harlow's gaze was not fixed on her. It was fixed on her car. His jaw was a line of granite. This was his street, not merely the street he patrolled, but the street where he lived. That pristine colonial house was his. He had spent years and every dollar he had climbing the social ladder to buy this neighborhood, this life. He did not see it as a community. He saw it as his personal kingdom, and he had crowned himself its king. And this car, this loud, ostentatious foreign car, was an insult parked right in front of him. Aria lowered her phone. A flicker of unease ran through her. The officer did not get out. He did not activate his lights or speak through the loudspeaker. He simply watched her car. She offered a hesitant, questioning smile, the kind one gives an authority figure one assumes is on one's side. There was no response. The patrol car's windows were tinted, but she could feel the weight of his stare, cold and heavy. She thought perhaps she had parked incorrectly after all. She took a step toward the car, ready to apologize and move it. But Harlow was not interested in apologies. He had already judged her. In his mind, this was no innocent mistake. It was a challenge. A young black woman in a flashy car and a red dress, parking in his neighborhood right in front of his house. He saw it all as a deliberate act of disrespect. He was not going to write a ticket. Tickets were for ordinary citizens. This required a lesson. With terrifying deliberation, he shifted the patrol car into park. He did not look at Arya. He opened the door, and the solid, heavy figure of his body emerged. He was a thick-set man, his bulk accentuated by the uniform and the gear on his belt. He moved with the unhurried confidence of someone who had never been questioned. From his belt, he did not draw a citation book. He drew his heavy black steel baton. Arya froze, phone still in her hand. She could not process what was happening. This could not be real. This was the Gables. This was broad daylight. Harlow walked straight to the passenger side of the Porsche. He said not a single word. He did not look at her. He was focused entirely on the vehicle. He raised the baton. Arya's breath caught. The first blow was a sickening crunch of metal and plastic as the baton shattered the passenger side mirror, leaving a spider web of broken glass across the blue paint. He did not stop. He struck again, this time driving the steel into the hood. A deep, ugly dent bloomed in the pristine metal, the sound cracking through the quiet afternoon air like a gunshot. He took one more step and delivered a final brutal blow to the headlight. It exploded in a rain of plastic shards. And then, it was over. As silently as he had arrived, Harlow sheathed his baton, returned to his patrol car, and climbed in. He put the car in gear and pulled away from the curb without a glance at her. He drove down the street, resuming his patrol as if he had just finished a routine traffic stop, as if he had not just committed a crime in full view of his victim. He believed his uniform was a shield. He believed his rank of captain made him an unapproachable god in this little kingdom. And he believed the young woman in the red dress was just another nobody who would be too frightened, too intimidated, to do anything about it. He was completely wrong. For a long moment, Arya stood motionless. The silence that settled after the patrol car disappeared was more chilling than the violence itself. The air, which moments before had smelled of cut grass and blooming hydrangeas, now carried a metallic ozone taste. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic rhythm of shock and disbelief. But beneath the shock, something else was rising. A cold, clear fury. Panic was a luxury she could not afford. Hysteria was a weapon her opponents used against her. Her father, Governor Harlan Blackwell, had taught her that from the moment she was old enough to understand. Panic is a cage you build for yourself, Arya used to say. When they expect you to scream, you whisper. When they expect you to cry, you think. And so she thought. Her numb fingers tightened around the phone. Her eyes scanned the scene. Her architect's eye for detail was now a forensic tool. The broken mirror, the deep, crescent-shaped dent in the hood, the shattered headlight, the tiny fragments of glass and plastic glittering on the asphalt like malevolent jewels. She began to move with precise, methodical steps. First, she walked to the front of her car, phone held steady. Click. A wide shot of the damage with the majestic colonial house in the background. Click. A close-up of the dented hood, the paint cracked around the point of impact. Click on the destroyed headlight assembly. She circled the vehicle, documenting every angle. She photographed the broken mirror lying on the ground, then zoomed in on the fragments still clinging to the housing. This was no longer just a car. It was a crime scene, and she was its only witness. Then she remembered that as Harlow's car pulled away, she had instinctively raised her phone. She scrolled through the photo roll, holding her breath. There it was, a slightly blurred but undeniable image of the rear of the patrol car, the license plate 7114 clearly visible, and in the corner of the frame, the last digit of the house number on Harlow's mailbox. A 2. The evidence was safe. Her instinct, the one drilled into every citizen, was to dial 911, report a crime, ask for help, trust the system. But Arya knew better. Calling 911 would mean calling Harlow's colleagues. It would mean a report filed by an officer who might be his friend, his subordinate, his drinking buddy. It would be her word, a black woman in a luxury car against a decorated police captain. The report would be buried. The investigation would stall. Justice would suffocate under a mountain of blue-line bureaucracy. She unlocked her phone again, but this time she did not check recent calls. She opened a secure messaging app her father had installed years earlier for emergencies. It had only 2 contacts. One was for his chief of staff. The other was an encrypted direct line to him labeled Priority Alpha. She had never used it. She typed a short, simple message. Dad, Priority Alpha. I'm safe, but I need you to see these photos. She attached the 5 clearest images, the wide shot of the car, the dented hood, the shattered mirror, the broken headlight, and the photo of the fleeing patrol car's license plate. She hit send. For a few seconds there was nothing. Then 3 dots appeared, showing he was typing. A moment later, his reply arrived. Where are you? The Gables, the Whitmore party, parked on Elm Street. She added, the guy lives here. He just got out of his car and did it. No words. Nothing. Another pause. The reply was chilling in its simplicity. Stay there. Don't talk to anyone. Don't go near the house. I'll handle it. Miles away in the state capital, Governor Harlan Blackwell sat in his private study. The rich mahogany walls absorbed the sound of his carefully controlled breathing. He stared at the photos on his phone, his face a mask of cold, concentrated rage. His daughter. His Arya. The crimson dress he had told her looked beautiful that very morning. The Porsche he had given her as a symbol of his pride in her success. And the ugly, violent scar carved into it by a man wearing the uniform of the state he governed. He did not slam his fist on the desk. He did not curse. James Stone's anger was something entirely different. It was silent, methodical, and absolute. He set the phone down and picked up the secure landline on his desk. He dialed a number from memory. It rang twice before it was answered. Chief Rourke, said a professional voice with a hint of surprise at receiving a call on that line. Chief, this is Governor Blackwell, he said in a flat, emotionless tone. It was a voice Rourke, whom Blackwell had appointed only months earlier, had learned to fear more than any shout. You have an officer, Captain Vance Harlow, badge number 481. He is currently on duty. There was a brief silence. Keyboard clicks could be heard. Yes, Governor. He's on patrol in the Northern District, Gables sector. He just took a baton to my daughter's vehicle, the governor stated, as if reading a weather report. Elm Street. I want you to go there personally, now. You will meet my daughter, Arya Blackwell. You will take her statement, and you will relieve Captain Harlow of command with immediate effect. Governor Rourke was stunned. There's no discussion, Chief Blackwell interrupted, his voice growing colder. You will place him on administrative leave without pay pending termination. You will collect his badge and service weapon on the spot. You will not discuss the details with him. You will simply inform him that his suspension is by direct order of the governor's office. I expect a full preliminary report of the incident on my desk within the hour. Understood? Yes, Governor, Rourke said in a tight voice. Understood. Good, said Governor Blackwell, and hung up. He looked again at the photo of his daughter's damaged car. The King of Elm Street had just earned himself a powerful enemy. He simply did not know it yet. Captain Vance Harlow sat in his leather armchair. The scent of lemon polish and old wood filled his living room. Through the large front window, he had a perfect, unobstructed view of his front garden. The late light reflected off the bronze surface of the statue, a magnificent life-size sculpture of a hunting eagle with wings partially spread and talons tensed. It had cost him a small fortune, a find at an auction he considered the crown jewel of his property. It was a symbol of strength, of predatory dominance. In his mind, it was a reflection of himself. For the past hour, that view had been blocked by the garish blue of a Porsche, an unwelcome intrusion into his perfectly tended world. Now the view was clear again. A grim smile touched his lips as he took a sip of iced tea. He felt a deep, satisfying sense of restored order. It was not just about the statue. It was about the principle. People needed to learn their place. They needed to understand that there were written rules and unwritten rules, and that men like him were there to enforce them. The girl in the red dress would think twice next time. She would go home, cry, and tell her friends about the crazy cop in the Gables. Maybe she would file a complaint that would go nowhere. He would write a report about an unknown vandal, and that would be the end of it. He was a captain. His word was gospel. Hers was noise. He was thinking about what he might have for dinner when the sound of a car pulling into his driveway broke the silence. He frowned. He was not expecting anyone. He leaned forward and looked out the window. It was not a friend. It was a departmental sedan, the official vehicle of the police chief. Harlow's satisfaction turned to confusion. Why was Chief Rourke here? Had the girl called 911? Had some rookie been stupid enough to elevate a complaint against a captain all the way to the chief's office? Irritation pricked him. He would have to put on a show, feign concern, and promise to investigate the vandalism himself. He stood, smoothing the front of his uniform shirt as he walked to the door. He opened it just as Rourke raised his hand to knock. "Chief," Harlow said, forcing a welcoming tone. "What brings you out here?" Chief Rourke's face was unreadable, a mask of professional neutrality more unsettling than any anger. He was not alone. Two other senior officers stood behind him with equally somber expressions. They stood on his carefully tended lawn, like undertakers. "Vance," Rourke said in a low, quiet voice. He did not smile. He did not offer his hand. "We need to talk." "Of course, come in," Harlow said, stepping back. "No," Rourke said, raising a hand. "We'll do this right here." The chief's gaze flicked past Harlow, down the street to where Arya stood beside her wounded Porsche, speaking with a uniformed officer who was taking her statement. Rourke's eyes returned to Harlow, and now they were cold steel. "Captain Harlow, by direct order of the governor's office, you are suspended from duty, effective immediately." The words hit Harlow like a punch. He felt the air leave his lungs. The governor's office. It made no sense. It was a car, a broken mirror. "What? What the hell are you talking about? On what grounds?" "The grounds are not your concern at this moment," Rourke said, in a voice that left no room for argument. "Your badge, Vance, and your weapon." Harlow stared at him, mind spinning. He looked past the chief to the girl down the street. The red dress, the Porsche. It clicked into place with the force of a tectonic shift. It could not be. It was impossible. Who was she? "This is crazy, Rourke," he stammered, raising his voice. "It's about the car, isn't it? She parked." "I'm not here to discuss that," Rourke cut him off sharply. "I'm here to carry out an order. Your badge, your weapon. Give them to me, or these officers will take them. Your choice." A burning acidic humiliation flooded Harlow's chest. His neighbors were beginning to notice. Mrs. Gable from across the street was watching through her curtains. The mailman had stopped his truck halfway down the block to stare. His kingdom was turning into a gallery, and he was the exhibit. His entire world was tilting. The power he had taken for granted, the authority he wore like a second skin, was being stripped from him on his own front porch. His movements were stiff, robotic. He unclipped his badge from its holder. The familiar weight of the shield in his hand suddenly felt foreign. He held it out to Rourke, who took it without a word. Then he unholstered his service weapon, hand trembling slightly. He ejected the magazine, cleared the chamber according to protocol, and handed over the gun grip first. It felt as if he were surrendering a piece of his own soul. "Internal Affairs will contact you in the morning," Rourke said in a clipped tone. "Until then, you are not to contact anyone in this department. You are not to access any police facility or database. You are a civilian. Do you understand?" Harlow could only nod, his throat too tight to speak. He watched as Rourke and the other officers turned and walked back to their car. The heavy silence of his front yard had become a roar in his ears. He looked at his bronze eagle, symbol of his power. Now it looked smaller, just a piece of metal on a patch of grass. Then he looked again at the girl in the red dress down the street. She was not looking at him. She was looking at the police chief, who approached her with a different posture, as if he were addressing a dignitary. In that moment, Vance Harlow understood. He had not disciplined a disrespectful kid. He had picked a fight with a princess, and the king himself had just answered. The internal investigation was less an investigation than a formal execution. It moved with a speed and efficiency unheard of in departmental bureaucracy. The preliminary report, prepared by Chief Rourke himself, was already on Governor Harlan Blackwell's desk the next morning. It was a concise, devastating document. It contained Arya's calm, objective statement, high-resolution photos of the damage, still frames from a neighbor's security camera that captured Captain Harlow, in uniform, striking the vehicle, and a summary of his service record. On paper, Harlow was a model officer with years of service, multiple decorations for bravery, and a rapid rise to the rank of captain. But a deeper dig ordered by Rourke overnight revealed another story. In his file were 3 prior civilian complaints for abuse of authority. All had been dismissed. One was from a teenager Harlow had yelled at for skateboarding on his sidewalk. Another was from a landscaper he had threatened to deport because the man's truck leaked oil on the asphalt. The third was from a delivery driver he had ticketed for double parking for 30 seconds. A pattern emerged. Every complaint came from working-class individuals without the resources or influence to stand up to a police captain. They were ants in the path of his ego. But the most damning part of the report was the motive. When he was finally questioned by Internal Affairs after a tense session in a sterile room, Harlow, stripped of his bravado, collapsed. He admitted everything when pressed to explain why. He did not speak of race or disrespect. He spoke of the statue. He spoke with a pathetic, almost tearful passion about his bronze eagle, how he had saved for years to buy it, how it was the centerpiece of his home, a symbol of his achievements. He explained that the Porsche, parked where it was, cast a shadow over the eagle's head. It blocked the light. He said it was an aesthetic affront, an act of visual intrusion that, in his twisted sense of ownership, demanded a physical response. The investigators in the room exchanged looks of disbelief. This was not about law and order. This was about a grown man throwing a tantrum because someone had parked in front of his garden ornament. As Governor Blackwell read the report, he felt a stab of something colder than anger. Contempt. The pettiness of the whole affair was more offensive than any grand malicious scheme. This man, this captain, had terrorized his daughter not out of some deeply held ideology, but out of a fragile ego tied to a piece of metal. Blackwell picked up the phone and called Rourke. "I've read the report, Chief." "Governor," Rourke answered, voice weary. "It's airtight." "I see his motive was his fondness for a garden decoration," Blackwell said dryly. "Tell me, Chief, when I appointed you, what was the first thing I said about command of the Northern District?" There was a pause as Rourke recalled the private meeting at the governor's mansion. Barely had the celebratory handshake ended when Blackwell had leaned in and spoken quietly. "Rourke, I'm giving you this job because the department needs a culture change. Start from the top. There are captains like Harlow in the North who think their districts are their personal fiefdoms. They're arrogant, unaccountable, and a lawsuit waiting to happen. I want you to do a deep clean, quiet, but thorough." Rourke's voice came through the phone full of understanding. "You told me to keep an eye on him. You said you were tired of budget requests for his special projects while citizen complaints were ignored." "Exactly," Blackwell confirmed. "I have the state budget proposal on my desk. The line item for Captain Harlow's Community Beautification and Enhanced Patrol Unit, the same unit he used to patrol his own neighborhood, is still active. I was considering cutting it in half. Now I'm considering eliminating it entirely and reassigning the funds to a civilian oversight committee." The threat was unspoken, but crystal clear. This was not merely about firing a corrupt cop. This was about the governor's power over the funding of the entire police department. Harlow had not only attacked the governor's daughter, he had personally insulted the man who signed his paychecks and held the fate of his entire unit in his hands. He had handed Governor Blackwell the perfect public justification to do what he had wanted to do for months. "The Departmental Review Board will recommend termination," Rourke said quickly, "and full restitution. The damage to the vehicle is estimated at just under $8,000. The city's legal team recommends we hold him personally liable." "That sounds appropriate," Blackwell said with finality. "Handle it, Chief, and I want this resolved by the end of the week." He hung up. The system was not merely working. It was accelerating, driven by a political will Harlow could never have comprehended. He had believed himself a king, but he was only a disposable pawn in a much larger game. His obsession with his bronze eagle had blinded him to the fact that a real eagle was circling high above, and it had finally decided to strike. The price of his arrogance would not be just his job. It would be his entire life. The fall of Vance Harlow was as swift as it was brutal. His termination was a formality. The police union, seeing the irrefutable evidence and sensing the political annihilation that would follow a prolonged fight, offered only token resistance before cutting him loose. The court order for restitution arrived soon after, $8,000. It was a sum he simply did not have. His captain's salary had been spent on the mortgage for his colonial house, the payments on his oversized truck, and of course the bronze eagle. Selling the statue was his first humiliating concession. It sold for less than half of what he had paid to a scrap metal dealer. It was not enough. Within months, the bank foreclosed on the house in the Gables. The kingdom he had built, the symbol of his arrival, was dismantled piece by piece. His name became a cautionary tale in the department, a synonym for professional suicide. No other law enforcement agency would touch him. A year after smashing Aria's headlight, Vance Harlow lived in a one-room apartment in the city's industrial zone. The air constantly smelled of exhaust and fried food. His new uniform was a cheap polyester shirt with a patch that read Allied Security. He worked the night shift guarding a deserted shopping center. His job was to walk the perimeter, check the doors, and report any suspicious activity to the real police. The irony was a constant bitter taste in his mouth. One night, parked in his battered sedan in the empty lot, a midnight blue Porsche Macan drove past on the main road. It was probably not the same one, but his heart still clenched. He caught a glimpse of a confident woman behind the wheel. He flinched, turned away, and stared at his own reflection in the dirty rearview mirror. The man looking back was no longer a king. He was a ghost, haunted by the memory of a crimson dress and the echo of breaking glass. He was a man who had lost everything because he could not stand the idea of a shadow falling across a piece of brass. For Aria, Justice was not a loud celebration. It was a quiet, internal reckoning. Her father managed the immediate aftermath with ruthless efficiency, shielding her from the bureaucratic fallout. The check for $8,000 arrived from the city's finance department, and she deposited it without ceremony. The Porsche was restored to perfection. The blue paint gleamed under the shop lights. No trace of the violence remained. For a few months she hesitated before getting behind the wheel. The car, once a symbol of her father's love and her own success, now felt tethered to a moment of ugliness. It carried the ghost of Harlow's senseless fury. One Saturday afternoon, she drove it to a dealership. Not a Porsche dealership, but one that sold practical, high-performance electric vehicles. She traded it in. With the trade-in money and the restitution check, she bought a new car, one she chose herself and paid for herself. It was elegant, quiet, and understated. It was hers. That night, sitting at her drafting table in her apartment, she drew the clean lines of a new building. The city skyline glittered beyond her window. Her phone vibrated. It was a message from her father. "Just checking in. Everything okay?" She smiled, a genuine, serene smile. She looked at the new car keys on her desk, then back at the clean, promising lines on the paper in front of her. She had faced a horrible part of the world and had not flinched. She had let justice take its course, and then, quietly, had reclaimed her own narrative. The red dress still hung in her closet, a reminder not of victimization, but of her own resilience. She was an architect, a builder, and she was building a life that no petty tyrant could ever destroy. She typed her reply. "Everything is perfect, Dad. Everything is exactly as it should be." In the end, this story is not only about a corrupt police officer getting what he deserved, it is about the very nature of power. There is the loud, fragile power of a man like Vance Harlow, a power built on a uniform, a badge, and the intimidation of those he considers beneath him. It is a power that needs to be seen, flaunted, enforced through acts of petty violence. It is the power of a bully on a playground. But when it collides with true influence, it shatters as easily as a car mirror. Then there is the vast, silent power exercised by Governor Blackwell. He did not wield it with shouts or threats, but with a few quiet, precise phone calls. It was the power of institutional systems, of a man who understood the intricate machinery that moves the world. It is a sobering reminder that sometimes the most decisive battles are not won in the street, but in the corridors of power, far from public view. Arya stands in the middle of it all. She did not need to shout or fight. She trusted her own strength, her own intelligence, and the foundation her father had built. Her victory did not lie in revenge, but in her ability to move forward, to exchange the symbol of a painful memory for the symbol of her own independence. She reminds us that true resilience is not about erasing scars. It is about building a future in which they no longer define you. We are left wondering about the silent injustices that happen every day when the victim is not a governor's daughter. But for that moment, on that quiet suburban street, the system worked. An abuser was held accountable, and a sense of order was restored. True order, not the kind imposed by a tyrant. What did you think of the governor's response? Was it true justice or simply privilege? Share your thoughts in the comments.